Hi, everybody, live from Square Vienna. Welcome to our Brainfood Talk today. My name is Paolo Dohodska. I'm a software gardener here at Square Solutions Vienna. And today I have the pleasure to introduce you to my lovely colleague Lena. And Lena will be talking about design meets development. So, what is such a Brainfood Talk? A Brainfood Talk is basically our effort to try to expose the internal knowledge sharing formats that we have within Square Solutions and give some of our insights and expose them to the outer world by using this YouTube stream. So I want to ask you to collaborate with us. So we are now live on YouTube. Please use the chat to ask questions. After the talk, we will have the opportunity to answer those questions, and Lena will be there to share her insights about the topics you are asking for. So then let's start immediately over and have a nice talk with Lena.
Hi, everybody, and also a warm welcome from my side to this Brainfood Talk. Today we will discuss the power of collaboration between UX designers and software engineers, or in other words, how design meets development. Let me shortly introduce myself before we get going. My name is Lena, and I'm a UX designer at Square. And before we get into the content, I want to put out some disclaimers on this talk. Please note that we need to simplify a couple of things to make it fit in the 30 minutes time frame that we have. Collaboration is a very complex topic and can depend on various things, such as the seniority of the team, organizational limitations, or a general setup of a team. Thus, we will not be able to cover all points. Moreover, it's important for me to state here that no point of view has all answers, and I will judge collaboration models based on my experience as a UX designer and the discussions we had in the team. So now that we stated all limitations, let's get going. So what are we going to discuss today? First, I would like to set the stage by explaining typical collaboration models that we've seen in the past, as well as giving you an overview how we work in our delivery team at Square. Once we cover this, we will then move on to some common problems we have faced in the past, as well as how we try to solve them. As Paul already mentioned, please feel free to use the chats for any questions that come along the way. We will give our best to try to answer them. So, all right, now really, let's get started. What do we as a team want to achieve? On a very high level, all of us, no matter if UX designers or software engineers, want to build seamless user experience for the end user by ensuring that functionality and design of a product are in harmony. Or in other words, we want to have happy end users being able to achieve their goals, ideally in an intuitive way. But if we all want the same thing, why do we still sometimes struggle to collaborate effectively with each other? To answer this question, let's take a more detailed view on how UX and development works together to understand why it's sometimes not really that simple, even if we have the overall goal together, and how we can still work together to achieve this. So it's important to understand that where we're coming from before we can evolve our collaboration. In earlier days, it was very common to work in silos, resulting in various problems. Probably the biggest pain was that different teams will always have different goals. The possibilities here that those goals are not summing up to an overall goal, which is generating impact for the end user, is pretty high. In working models like those, we are blocking the progress because we lack in collaboration and communication. Moreover, feedback loops are rather little, and by not being exposed to certain perspectives or ideas or different perspectives and ideas, we run into danger to reduce innovation and creativity. So overall, people started to realize that working in silos is probably not the best way to work together, and that it can hinder the effectiveness and efficiency in software development teams. And also started to realize that it can have a negative impact on the quality of the final product. So nowadays, agile approaches became as obvious as breathing for the development, software development world. As Scrum is one of the most common form of agile, I will refer to the Scrum framework within the next couple of slides. In theory, this model looks great and easy compared to the model we've seen before. We have now advantages such as continuous integration and deployment, leading us to higher efficiency. Putting Agile and Scrum frameworks into practice is, however, not that simple. And as teams are different and there is no one-size-fits-all solutions. There are multiple reasons for struggling to be really agile. However, I don't want to go in details here because this talk is about the collaboration. So let's focus on the collaboration here between UX designers and software engineers. Where should the UX be integrated within this process? That's a question that arises if you start working with Scrum frameworks, as Scrum naturally does not integrate design work too well, and you're at risk that collaboration ends up looking a little bit like this. So in this case, we can see that UX design gets outsourced from the development process and is not integrated. That can happen if, for example, the designers are not dedicated to specific Scrum teams, which leads us to less collaboration. Also, this working model can also feel a little bit like design work feeding the machine. Staggered sprints can result into mini waterfall processes, which can rely on high documentation and handoffs. As if we are agile, we want to create less waste and as possible and integrate each other on an early stage. This might not be ideal. However, it's important for me to note here that staggered sprints are no evil. It's valid to use working modes like those if, for example, you have a very small project or it's not complex at all. All those can be valid reasons for working in modes like those. Also, we have to take into consideration that there are some organizational limitations which can hinder us from evolving further. So, for example, if the software engineering process is outsourced from the company, it can get tricky to go further. However, in most cases, we don't want to end up here and evolve more, become more collaborative and even more agile. So, what can we do to evolve further? One way, or also the way we work at our delivery team at Square, is called dual track agile. This working mode allows us to integrate discovery and delivery work within one process for the same team. So that means both types of work are performed by one team. While the discovery part helps to validate ideas and prioritize them, the delivery part takes those learnings and applies them. While the delivery team can then work on a set of improvements, the discovery team can already figure out what to do next and what should be the next steps and how to prioritize. That sounds really great in theory. But there are multiple actions we need to take to be successful with this model. And also, there is an easy way of misinterpreting this model. So an example for this can be that we divide the team into sub-teams instead of doing the work together. So if this happens, often the UX designer and the product manager focus on the discovery work, while the rest of the team does all the delivery work. Another point which is important to mention is that even though everybody is involved and we create a common goal, priorities within a team can still leave us with discussion. So while UX designers tend to prioritize the user experience a little bit higher, software engineers prioritize the technical feasibility a little bit higher, even in setups like those. But it helps us to take more informed actions. At Square, we took several steps to be successful with dual track agile. For us, it's crucial to have a dedicated designer on the team to help to bring a deeper understanding of the customer to the team, as well as how to best serve those needs. Another step we took is to let everybody participate in all activities. This means the dailies and the plannings are just as important for the designer as brainstorming about designs are for software engineers. By integrating design and development on an early stage, we can avoid building products with less values, take more advanced decisions, and avoid designing stunning ideas which are simply not technical feasible. Instead, we create together products which are technical feasible and user-centric. Our cross-functional team also enables us to celebrate successes together and, what is even more important, learn together from failures. Also, it makes it easy to establish clear and easy communication channels and have a shared understanding of the user's need. This is just an example of how you can work together, and there are multiple actions you can take to integrate design work into your software engineering process. However, the most crucial part is to reflect together as a team what works for you, what does not work for you, what are the biggest pain points, and based on those findings, you can adjust your collaboration model. So I know we've gone through most of the advantages of working together already. However, I want to sum them up again. By working so close together, we can create better user experience simply because it allows us to communicate at eye level with each other, and information about user needs is not outsourced to one or two people only. And thereby we can better align the design and the implementation. Also, we can increase efficiency as well as improve quality as we create less waste and avoid misunderstandings. Working together also enhances our problem solving simply because more people are involved in the process. Overall, we create a better understanding of constraints and limitations and can already consider them from the beginning. So, on our way to evolving to dual track agile, I sometimes found myself in conversations with the team that looked a little bit like this. Hey, can you buy me bread? Oh, and if they have bananas, please bring 4. So the team got back with 4 breads. And I would ask, why did you buy 4 breads? And the answer would be, well, because they had bananas. Of course, I know this is a very illustrative example, but let's dig a little bit with this. Of course, we can now start blaming each other for not delivering the right thing, but that does not really solve the problem. So what can we do to avoid miscommunication problems like those? Let's get the most obvious right out of the way. Of course, it's important to be specific. So instead of asking for bread and bananas, to stick with this example just one more time, I could have asked for 1 bread and 4 bananas. But software is unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, not always as simple as getting bread and bananas from the grocery store. So what can we do to evolve our communication? The first step we can take is enhance our prototypes with prototype specifications. I know I first stated that we don't want to produce too much waste with handovers and documentation. However, sometimes a prototype specification can help us to represent ideas more clearly and concisely. I know prototype specifications don't solve all the problems because they still leave room for misinterpretation. So it's important to have face-to-face meetings to go through specifications and implications. So to put that into practice, how do we do that? On the left side, you see a list of items which should be shown to the end user. And this prototype shows only a little information to no information about the default sorting. By adding a little note about how the default sorting should look like, we can save already a lot of time. On the right side, on the other hand, you see that we let the end user choose from 3 different statuses, which is open, active, and closed. Based on the decision the end user takes, he will then see results. While the statuses open and active are very clear for the whole team, the status closed actually includes 2 statuses, aborted and successful. To avoid miscommunication and confusion, we just add a little note here saying what it means. However, it's also important to state that it's very unrealistic that we write down every single specification, simply because sometimes it's time reasons or simply because we are unaware. But probably the most important reason why we don't write down everything is because we want to build valuable products and not writing specifications only. So it's important to understand when it's really useful to write down specifications and when you can leave them out. So let's get to the next example. Probably all of us have heard, make it work, or now make it pretty. Both statements are signed for involving engineer or design expertise in a too late state of the project, and can also be assigned for failing the goal to build technical, feasible, and user-centric products. Only if we are a team and include both expertise to the same extent, we can build valuable products. This is why it's also important to own the product design as a team and shift the responsibility. It's important to understand and to keep the mindset that all of us have ideas and all of us are to a certain extent designers. By being inclusive and letting everybody articulate their ideas, we can build far better user experiences. I know, of course, people with no or little expertise in designing tend to have a little bit of a fear of designing. And I totally understand that. It can feel frightening in the beginning, and having the fear of failure is really a thing. So I think it's important to take away the stress that comes with designing and openly communicate that you cannot really fail and that all ideas have a valid point. So how do we take away the fear of designing? We found methods such as, for example, design thinking workshops as very effective to get everybody on board. Also, there are fun activities such as Crazy 8, which you can use to take away the fear of designing. Here, it might be necessary to add that this method maybe sometimes still feel intimidating at first to people who haven't designed before. But by briefly understanding how to sketch and reminding everybody that that all ideas sketched don't have to be great, and leading through the process helps to take away this fear. So another point I want to mention is leveling up the conversation, because that really helps us in collaborating effectively together. So what do I mean with leveling up the conversation? It does not really mean to have more meetings because we already have a lot of meetings. It's more about having a deeper understanding for the other part. So by bringing our, so to say, languages or expertise closer together, it can help us to build greater products. I know there are a lot of opportunities to level up the conversation. And before we dig into any examples, I just want to get this straight. There is no expectation of designers becoming developers or of developers becoming designers. But there has to be a little bit of an understanding, because this is crucial for the collaboration, as it helps us to not only avoid miscommunication, but also be more efficient. So now let's look into some examples how hands-on coding and a basic understanding of architecture has helped me to become a better team player, and how I think UX thinking has helped my beloved colleagues, vice versa. Especially coming from a non-technical background, I found it crucial for my development as a UX designer to have hands-on coding sessions with the rest of the team. It has helped me to understand why something is done the way it is done, and how developers look at my wireframes. Maybe some of the examples I will mention here are obvious for some of you, but I'm for sure not the only person transforming from a background with no to little technical background to a UX designer. It probably starts with understanding that even if design tools can easily do everything, and to give an example, you can easily do all kind of gradients in all possible ways. It's crucial for me to understand as a designer that some ways might not be possible to actually code, or if they are taking more effort and time. Another example I want to give here is grids and flexboxes and how they work. By understanding to a certain extent how flexboxes and grids work, I can already consider this behavior within the design, and we can move on quicker. Or to give a more complex example, things like autocomplete search field. Please don't get me wrong. I don't know how to implement an autocomplete search field myself. And this is also not the goal. The goal is to understand why they take more time to be implemented, or that they take more time to be implemented. Also to understand what things need to be specified before we can move on to the development. This helps to improve the communication between the team, but also helps me to evaluate in the first place if it's needed. Also, it can help within the discussions with clients to already know which tools we want to use. The same goes for a basic understanding of architecture. I'm not a software architect, and I don't want to become one. But it's a fact that software architecture and design influence each other. So let's give you an example here. Let's think about a real estate agency where we have a platform for it. On the dashboard, we see here, we want to display data from the land register, from the population register, and also our own data. And all of this is a lot of data coming from different sources. It's important for me to understand that those informations are coming from different sources and where they're coming from, so to decide if the benefit of showing all those data together at one point overrules the disadvantage of maybe poorer performance, or if we have any other options, such as, for example, lazy loading. Knowledge like this does not come overnight. And while it's still sometimes hard for me to follow in every detail, I try to ask questions, join sessions where architecture is discussed, join task plannings, of course, and also do my own research. However, we work in a cross-functional team, and it's not a one pathway. Of course, cross-functional learning goes both sides. In our setup, I found it extremely valuable that the rest of the team has a basic understanding of how a UX designer thinks, and how we can actually solve some problems to extract the most important aspects of that. It lets the team also make decisions on their own on a level that supports the software engineering process and avoids unnecessary bottlenecks. So let's move on to the next example conversation. Here you go. If it needs to be done next week, when should we get together to discuss? 3 months ago. This example already shows us that we clearly fail to respect realities. So, of course, it's important to respect those realities within a team. Limitations can be, for example, project timelines or team capacities to not be able to get design transformed into code. Within a project, we will always move within those limitations and, of course, technical constraints. This is reality. We have to face that. However, limitations are not automatically resulting in bad solutions. It simply means that we have to find solutions that to solve a user problem within a given environment. It might not be possible to develop the most fanciest search you've ever seen within a 1 week sprint if there are other things with higher priority. But maybe that's also not the only way to solve a user problem. Also, it's a fact that during a sprint, we will sometimes find out that some things are more or less complicated as planned, as we cannot foresee everything. We have to have open discussions about possible alternatives and ask questions such as, what can we do? What would that mean for the end solution? Would it still fulfill the user's need? And of course, it's also relevant to ask how long the new solution would take in comparison to the old solution to decide together what should be the next steps. Okay. And last, but definitely not least, we need to give up ownership of ideas. Because we ain't got no time for egos. We need to understand that most requirements are simply assumptions. This does not mean that user research and user interviews are not necessary. They are as relevant as ever because they still bring us closer to the actual needed product and help us to take informed actions. However, it simply means that we don't know how the user will actually use our product in the end. And by shifting our mindset from this is their idea to this is one idea, and understanding that we're not going to get it right the first time, we can reduce attachment to ideas and allow others' ideas to take up space. By not being able to to let ideas change, you limit options and you might also miss powerful opportunities. Giving up ownership of an idea allows you to work closer together to create better experience, become more collaborative, and make the process even fun. So let's sum it up. There are no one size fits all solutions that will fit every team at every given state. It's key to communicate and do perspectives together to understand your pain points within a team and allow open and quick feedback rounds to develop a strategy that works best within your team. It's also a lot more about having the right mindset and not so much about the tools. If we think together as a team that needs to accomplish certain tasks instead of thinking in separate teams, which work a little bit against each other, we will be able to deliver great products that meet user needs and are technical feasible. For me, as a UX designer, the biggest learning was that not all great ideas have to come from me. And taking away the fear of asking others for their ideas, as well as removing the pressure to have everything coming from my feather. While it's my job to bring in UX expertise into the team, it's also my job to get everybody involved and evaluate different options and perspectives rather than deciding everything myself. Thank you so much for listening to this talk. Before we move on to the Q&A session, I would like to announce our next Brainfood Talk, which will be on the 10th of March at 12 p.m. about the Unleashing the Power of Backstage, which is an innovative developer portal that brings all the relevant information about software components to one place. Also, I would like to remind you about our CodeCraft conference, which is happening on the 1st of June 2023. We still have early bird tickets available until the 18th of March, in case you still want to save some money. Thank you. Let's move on to the Q&A session now.
So thank you very much, Lena, for your talk. And I really loved the insights that you shared, especially the insights about this close collaboration between the designers in a team and UX designers and UI designers and development. And we have one question in the chat regarding that issue a little bit. And Pavel Leonard asks, if you work so close together, why do you need so much documentation?
So it's important to evaluate which documentation we really need and which we don't need, and to leave out the one we don't need. But also it can be that we decide something together and implement it on a later stage. So we have to figure out, we have to sometimes write it down so that everybody reminds it on a later stage of the time, and there are no further discussions coming up if we already discussed something. I would say that's one reason why it's important for us, but of course it depends really on a team.
Okay, thank you. So also Pavel says thanks in the chat. There's another question that says, do you designers join all Scrum events?
So I try to join as many as possible. So I'm always involved in the dailies and of course also in refinements. For task planning, it really depends on the topics. I try to join as many task plannings as possible, but of course it's not always possible. So for example, if there is a task planning because there's a sprint which is highly on the backend side, it can be that I only join for the very most crucial part and not the whole time.
I also think that it's really important, and I really love that you stress this point in your talk, that design efforts are not just on the side of one specific team member, but it's also a collaborative thing that has to be going on. And so to keep everybody in the loop in the different activities on that side. So I think that's really important here, yes. So thank you. Christoph Sprenger asks, how many days do you leave in between the sprint weeks? For example, when the customer finds a bug, but the sprint is already over.
So we try to work as close together with the client as possible. So also in our project, for example, the client joins our dailies, so they already know a lot of the things. And we are very transparent about anything which is not working. So we try to figure out stuff even before a sprint ends. And sometimes it also depends, of course, how big a bug is. If it's something which will not affect the user experience to a very big extent, we can maybe deprioritize it. But of course, if it's something that really affects the user experience, we have to get it done as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you. David asks, in your opinion, are there any constellations, organizational-wise, in which the close collaboration process you described doesn't work?
I think it's really if a collaboration process works or not really depends on the team, and you cannot generalize that because it's a lot about finding out what works within a team and not within the whole organization sometimes. Also, as I mentioned, sometimes it gets hard to work like this. Is, for example, the software development process is outsourced from a organization. It can get hard to work so closely together.
Okay, thank you. There is a question from Natalie. She asks, are you as UX designer working with one team or squad or with several teams?
So I personally have, I'm assigned to one team. So I'm working most of the time on one big project where we are a few software engineers and myself, and of course the product manager. However, sometimes I get consulted for smaller projects or smaller stuff.
Okay, thank you. Yes, and then finally, I think there is another question by Pavel. He asks now, what is the dev to UX ratio at Square? Or in other words, how many devs do you have and how many UX designers?
So for this, it's really important to understand that our organization is kind of structured in two ways. So we have the enabling teams and the delivering teams. And at the moment, we have one delivery team consisting of 5 developers and one project manager and myself. And the enabling teams often work with teams in other organizations.
So where there might be some internal UX UI person, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. So thank you very much, Lena. I think that's all the questions from the chat. Yes, and I want to say thank you to you, of course. Thank you to all of our audience. And so I will reinforce the next Brainfood Talk by our colleague Jerzy at the 10th of March. And have a nice weekday. We have a nice weekend in this awesome sunny time. Yeah, see you.
Bye. Thank you.